Welcome to the FI Investors Podcast, helping you achieve financial independence through real estate investing, one episode at a time. We talk about personal finance, mindset, and real estate investing. Whether you're a rookie or looking to scale your portfolio, we're here to provide you with the tactics and actionable steps to achieve your goals. Here are your hosts, Diego Corzo and Ward Mahoney.
What is up, guys? Diego here with the FI Investors Podcast. Welcome to another episode. Today, I am interviewing Matt King. He is the CEO of GoBundance. He's also the right-hand man of David Osborne, who's one of my mentors, worth around $180, $200 million. He and I have been friends since 2015, and his journey is just incredible. Lots of deep conversations, as well as what's working now in this market, how he's built a team around him, how he's hired other people. So this podcast is awesome. You guys are going to take a lot from it. And so we're going to get started with him here in a little bit. But before we do that, if you guys can, please do us a great favor. Please give us a rating and review on iTunes and Spotify, and we're also on YouTube. So feel free to leave a comment there and reach out to us if you have any questions. One last thing, if you guys are wanting to learn more about achieving financial independence, you guys can go to keys2fi.com. That is keys2fi.com. And if you guys are looking to get started with the mastermind, become one of our mentees, one of our students to connect with other investors, go to thefiinvestors.com or reach out to myself or to Ward on Instagram, and we can schedule a quick call with you, see how we can help, and go from there. All right. Welcome to another episode of the FI Investors Podcast. I am here with Matt King, the one and only. How are you, Matt?
I'm great, Diego. How are you, man?
Doing well. I really appreciate you doing this because it's 7:30 in the morning, and I really appreciate your time starting the day early. So I know this is going to be a great podcast.
My pleasure, man. I try to start every single day early. I usually get up around 4:17, get my workout in, get some reading done, try to do a little meditation maybe 3 or 4 times a week, and then try to be at my computer working and getting ready for the day between 6:45 and 7. So it's already late for me. I get half the day done.
Man, I woke up around 6 a.m. today. But it's all good. Cool. Well, Matt, tell us a little bit. So you have an incredible story. You've grown so much since I met you in 2015, 2014. You have a similar story on how we got started with our mentors. But I want to see how did you get started, and then we'll go into everything that you're working on right now, because it's super inspirational.
Yeah, look, I'm very fortunate to have an amazing wife, 2 beautiful children, incredible family, amazing in-laws, and an incredible sort of support system around me that has sort of helped shape who I've become, or who I am becoming still on this journey of life. At a young age, I knew that I was always wired a little bit differently. I've always been pretty motivated, pretty driven, pretty sort of hard charging to make money. And for me, it wasn't about like the things I could buy or, the shoes I could wear. I mean, granted, like, yeah, it's cool to have like, neat shoes, it's cool to have fun soccer cleats. But at the end of the day, for me, money has always been about freedom. And I remember, clear as can be, going to my mom when I was 12 years old and saying, "Hey, Mom, I want to order pizza for dinner." And her dropping a phone book on the counter, because we didn't have, cell phones or smartphones at that time. And if we had the internet, we had to go up and use the old AOL dial-up that made that crazy like dialing tone to just log into the internet. Mm-hmm. And she dropped it on the table and said, "If you want pizza, go ahead and order it." And that was kind of like, for me, like a really like powerful moment in my life that made me recognize that I could find the way or make the way to do whatever I wanted in life. And I tell people all the time, like, I got lucky, because it's, it's not untrue, but it's also an easier way to say, and move on from a conversation than to say like, I've worked really hard. I've made a ton of mistakes. I failed. I continue to move forward. There's been a lot of sleepless nights. There's been a lot of risks. Been a lot of hard conversations with myself, with those people around me. And I just kind of continue to try to get 1% better every day. I was fortunate at a young age to meet some really incredible people while working in the locker room of a country club. Was really fortunate to have this amazing girl by my side named Melissa, who said, "Hey, I'm moving to the inner city schools of Washington, D.C. so I can go teach when I graduate." And, to tell her I'm moving with her, and, her to look me in the eye and say, "I didn't invite you." And said, "Tough, I'm coming with." I mean, we'd only been dating for 6 months. We've been really good friends for a long time, but, officially dating for 6 months, took a risk, moved out there. Took a risk on a Craigslist ad to volunteer to camp for children with incarcerated parents. Met this guy named Pat Hyben. Took the opportunity to read his book in a day when he told me he was a New York Times bestselling author. Asked him what it would take to have coffee with him. And then, it just kind of compounded from there. And what I would tell all of the listeners on this call is you're one choice away from changing your destiny. Like, I know it's a dramatic statement, and I know people are going to go like, "Oh yeah, easy for you to say," but like, seriously, one choice away from changing your destiny. Like, that one choice to volunteer at the children's camp, or that one choice to move to Washington, D.C. with this amazing girl, or that, one choice to ask her what it would, be like to not be friends and actually date, or that, one choice to move to Austin, Texas. Like, you're literally one choice away from changing your destiny. And I would tell you that, like, those choices continue to show up. They continue to pop up for you, Diego, and they've popped up for you too. I mean, talk about an incredible story. Look at yours. I think the thing that a lot of people make a mistake around is they make a choice and they think they fail, quote unquote, according to social norms, according to society, their significant other, their family, their bosses, whatever. They think they failed, and so all of a sudden they stop choosing. And at that moment in time, you've kind of like set the cap on your life. And so what I've continued to try to do is just keep choosing. And, like, one of my favorite things to think about is just keep failing, because the only time we fail in life, Diego, is when we take risks and we try to do things outside of our comfort zone. And to me, that's where the growth happens.
Yeah, and you've definitely have seen taking advantage of those choices. Now, how do you know when you make a choice and when you can seize that opportunity? Because some people may do choices, but they don't actually seize the opportunity or take as much action as they should.
Well, I think the reason that people don't take action or take advantage of opportunity is fear, right? Like, fear is probably one of the number one controllers in our life. It, granted, fear is what keeps us safe. Fear is what, stops us from jumping out of a building. Fear is what stops us from, eating a poisonous berry on a hike in the woods. But fear also holds us back from accomplishing what we want. And so what I've tried to focus on is, as I've continued to go through this journey of life, I won't say get older, but go through this journey of life, is to take that volume of fear and just turn it down. It's never going to go away. I'm never going to be able to mute it, but just turn it down. And the way I do that, Diego, is I put myself in really uncomfortable positions consistently, and I continue to move forward through those actions in spite of the fear. Hiking a 14er, riding a bull, doing 29.029 this year, going skydiving, learning how to shoot a gun. Like, all of those things aren't comfortable. They aren't new, but I put them in my life. I put them in front of me on my goals, so that I'm able to recognize that, like, feeling of overcoming fear and what's on the other side of it isn't that scary. I have this crazy, stupid sort of ish story that I rode a bull, and people said, "Why the heck would you ride a bull?" And, I play it off and say, well, I'm in Texas and I wanted to do something extreme. But the reality is like, I want to put myself in a position every single year where I feel fear, and I overcome the fear, and I make a choice to push through the fear. So that when fear comes up in a business conversation, when fear comes up in my relationship, when fear comes up with my children, I'm not paralyzed by the fear, but I'm able to continue to recognize the fear and push through it and choose it. And I think that's what people fail to do. And failure, again, isn't a terrible thing, but that's what they fail to do. And then they look at, well, I never get these opportunities. I'm never able to take advantage of these things. It's not because they don't present themselves. It's because when they show up, fear kicks in, doubt kicks in, paranoia kicks in, and they aren't able to choose those. And so the thing I would encourage every single person that's listening to this, every single person in the FI community, is continue to choose in spite of fear. And don't like say, okay, well, I haven't taken any risks in my life, so I'm going to go buy a $2 million flip and I'm going to put $1 million into it. I'm going to sell it for 7. Like, no, that's not like logical fear. Like the fear of like, hey, I'm going to go skydiving, or I'm going to run 5 miles, or I'm going to have a hard conversation with my significant other, or I'm going to go, visit the gravesite of a dear friend that I've been afraid to visit, or whatever fear is in your life. Like just choose one little thing and overcome that, and watch the momentum that will come with that and compound in your life.
Yes, because at the end of the day, I believe it's a muscle. Like the taking action becomes a muscle, and also seeing that the problems, because the problems don't go away. Whether you have money, don't have money, starting out, have experience. So it's more of the muscle that one gets stronger as you hit different obstacles. Because, for example, I know that an obstacle for somebody, let's say that's starting out investing, for somebody else that has bought 10 properties, is not a big of an obstacle. It's like, oh, you can just get a roofer, an inspector, you get a quote, and you negotiate it. Another person might be like, oh my gosh, this roof is messed up. I'm gonna walk away from the deal. As an example, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
I would say with that example, it's a great point. Like that's just a muscle, but it's also a lack of knowledge. And so I would say fear often comes because of uncertainty. So the way to do that is to join a community like FI Investors, listen to podcasts like this, and educate yourself and ask questions. If somebody reached out to you tomorrow and said, Diego, I'm thinking about buying my first rental property. I'm not in FI Investors, but I'm a listener of the podcast. What would it take to earn 10 minutes of your time? I'm fortunate to know you as a human. You would say, absolutely, when do you want to jump on a call, and you pour into it. But most of us already make the decision that Diego won't respond, and so I'm not going to reach out. So we allow fear to paralyze us rather than, like you said, use it as a muscle to push through those choices and strengthen that muscle and recognize that it's not that bad on the other side.
Yeah, no, 100%, 100%. So then, all right. So then you were working with Pat Hyben. And then what happened? What got you into GoBundance and then moving to Austin?
Yeah, look, I learned these tools inside of GoBundance, which was goal setting and having a vision for your life. And the thing that's cool about goal setting is once you refine the skill or the muscle of goal setting, you then have the ability to predict your future, right? Like setting goals is the first step in my mind from taking the invisible and making it visible, right? Taking like what's not in our lives currently and bringing it into our lives. And so I was fortunate to come in contact with this guy named David Osborne, kind of showed up and served, was on the first Go crew at an event in Orlando with your brother, actually, who's an amazing dude. And I think he was probably 17 or 18 at the time, like talking about like going back to high school on that Monday, I think was
going back to college, his first semester in college.
You're right. Yeah, he just graduated. He was going back to college, and here we are, just two young, hungry kids sitting in these rooms with these incredible guys going like, what did we do to get here? And what we did to get there was we slept on the floor. We made sure everybody had water. We ran to the grocery store when somebody needed Tylenol. We made sure the paper was printed and the chef was cooking and the food was ready. And like, we just served, and we showed up and served. And by doing that, I was very fortunate to recognize what I wanted from life. And what I wanted from life was to surround myself with amazing people that, could expose me to different things. Because I think in life, and David, who I'm fortunate enough to work with today, and look up to, call it a really, really close mentor, says you're either working for equity or you're working for knowledge. When you're 19, 20, 21, 23, even when you're 50, like there's so many opportunities in this world to work for knowledge. And so I think a lot of times we explore opportunities going, what's in this for me, rather than saying, I'm going to serve, abundantly and trust that the world, the universe, God, whatever you believe in, will return that tenfold. And so I've just showed up and served. David said, what would it take to get you to Austin? Melissa and I came to check out Austin, fell in love with this incredible city. I always, give you all the credit for us moving here, because you took my wife to this German restaurant called Bangers, and they have a thing called a Manmosa, which is this giant gallon of like orange juice champagne, and they only let you drink one a day, so they stamp your hands. And so Diego takes us there. My wife drinks the Manmosa, and the next thing you know, we're signing a lease on an apartment. So I always give you the credit for us being here, Diego. But
you're welcome. You're welcome. Always good experience.
Very fortunate. very fortunate to move to Austin. And David said, my world's a mushroom cloud getting ready to explode. Look over my shoulder and take stuff off my plate. And I think you're talented. If I'm right, there's going to be a really cool opportunity here. And if I'm wrong, you just move back to wherever the hell you came from, and I'll move on with my life. And I kind of looked at myself in the mirror. I said, okay, so heads he wins, tails I lose. I'll take that bet every day because I'm going to believe in myself, and I'm going to figure out a way to get that quarter to land on its side so I win, because that was the only way to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, it's it's been an amazing journey. I'm excited to continue on this journey. I'm excited that you were able to help us, in so many different aspects of our life, from a personal, from an investment, from a real estate. I mean, never forget when we were going to look at that new build that we built, and it had rained, and that sandy loam soil that they have here in Austin destroyed your dress shoes. I think at one point they may have even fallen off their foot because it got stuck in the mud.
Yes.
So yeah, just having fun on this thing called life, and just exploring the journey every single day.
Yes, dude. And it's funny because we were just at your house a couple of weeks ago, and I was talking to Julio and Andres, and I was like, man, this house is beautiful. But before, in the first walkthrough, I had these brown shoes that I had just bought, and I never wore them again. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm just going to throw them. It was a mess, but it was totally worth it.
It was a mess.
Totally.
I remember after the walkthrough, you took those brown shoes, threw them in the back of your Tesla. Then you gave us a present for my daughter, who I believe at the time had just turned 2, which was this really cool, like, rocking horse, like, kind of thing where she would sit on it and move all different directions, and it would play music and do all this cool stuff.
Yes.
And yeah, I've never seen those shoes again, but rightfully so, because they were trashed. They were trashed from that mud.
It's part of the real estate experience, I'll tell you. So that's awesome. Okay, so then you working with David, right? You are basically the chief of staff, the second in command.
Mm-hmm.
And you've done it at a super young age, being able to take David's so when I met David, he was worth around 40 million to now, let's say 180, 200 million. Mm-hmm. And you've been every step of the way from 40 to 180. And you've been there to do the negotiations on businesses, on everything. What are some things that you have learned that you think may have taken that net worth to basically go from 40 to 180?
I mean, look, dude, the guy was on a rocket ship with or without me. Was I instrumental in his growth? I like to think so, but at the end of the day, like, I've just been a stewardess on the plane. Like, yeah, I'm there to serve drinks, make sure everybody has a great experience, but the pilots were already taking that damn thing wherever they wanted to go. And so, I'm very, fortunate to be on that journey. I'm very lucky to be able to spend as much time around such a big thinker as him. And the amount of stuff I've learned along the way is just incredible. I mean, from negotiating employment agreements to having a vision for your life to, trying to be a better father to, conscious leadership and thinking about how I'm communicating with my wife. Like, everything he's working on, I get to work on too. Mm-hmm. It's like I tell people all the time, like, if we win the Super Bowl and I'm the water boy, I still get a ring. Like, I don't need to be the man holding the trophy at the end, but I definitely want a ring. And for me, a ring looks like, financial freedom and being able to choose what I want, when I want, with whom I want, wherever I want. And I just trust that by having a vision for my life, by having goals in my life and surrounding myself with amazing people, that I will be held accountable to get there, and using the different things that show in my life as vehicles as the way to get there is what I'm continuing to do. And the things that I've learned, man, like, oh my gosh, it's been crazy. It's just from negotiating, employment agreements to retrading somebody on Laguna Lane, which you were a part of that transaction. I remember how afraid you were to go to the guy and say we were going to cut him by 10% after we had said, all cash close in 15 days, no inspections, no contingencies. And I told you to use the inspection report to go get 10% off. And the guy said yes. And, just all of those things, like, and to me, Diego, like, it's all kind of like a game. Now, it's a very high stakes game, and there's a lot of pressure, and the mistakes, like, can cost a lot of money. But at the end of the day, man, like, life is so short. Life is so precious. Like, we're fortunate to not be doing brain surgery or trying to solve a cure for cancer or like, holding a newborn infant's lives in our hands, because I'd probably absolutely ruin that because I'm not, detail oriented enough. Like, so the things that we're working on, the things that we're playing, like I always tell myself, like, did anybody die? Did anybody get hurt? Yeah, we might have lost some money, which isn't fun, but like, how did we learn from that and how will we choose differently on the other side? Because, the only time that you really are making a mistake is when you make the same bad choice 2 times in a row. Other times it's just learning, it's just growing, it's just education. And sometimes the cost of education can be, $3,000 a semester, or sometimes it could be $300,000 in lost earnest money on a deal because the due diligence didn't shake out the way you wanted to, and you missed the termination period, and the market shifted, and the lender bailed, and the next thing you know, you're losing 300 grand, right? Like, so it looks very different, but it's all part of education. And as long as you take that education and apply it into other areas of work, for me specifically, or for, anybody listening to this, their lives, like, it's just the cost of tuition. It's just part of paying dues.
Yes. And understanding that you can take the lesson and don't do it again at the end of the day.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I tell people all the time, like, we're all human. And until we're robots, we're going to make mistakes. Even robots are going to make mistakes. I mean, I'm sure your Tesla every once in a while makes a mistake or does something funky, right? And that's all AI or,
Yes.
robotic. So, making mistakes is okay. It's normal. I mean, you just have to continue to move forward and learn from it, and not beat yourself up. My communications coach is an incredible woman. She's working with my wife and I right now. And one of the things she says is to have compassion for yourself and others, and have empathy for yourself and others. Like, how many times do we beat ourselves up? And, the thing I've been asking myself lately, because I'm like super hard on myself, man. I mean, you've gotten a chance to witness how competitive I am and how motivated I am, and sort of growth minded I am. But with that comes sort of this like super hard critique of self. And the thing I've been asking myself right now is, if someone talked to my 4-year-old daughter the way that I talk to myself, what would I do? I'm like, this isn't okay. I've got to change the way I talk to myself, because that is going to, through osmosis, transfer to my children, transfer to my wife, transfer to the people I spend time with. And I don't want my daughter to talk to herself the way I talk to myself. I don't want my wife to talk to herself the way that I talk to myself. So I have to make a change, which is hard. It's uncomfortable. It's not perfect. It's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But I have to make those changes for myself and others, because I want what's best for everybody that I come in contact with. And that includes me.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, what, when you're talking, not self-sabotaging, but when you're talking bad about within yourself or judging yourself, once you ask that question of what would I tell if somebody was talking to my daughter like that? What is the question then that you ask yourself, or how do you change that conversation within yourself to be something more positive?
Yeah, like the thing I've been trying to do right now is, when I find like a critique or like I say something to myself, and I in my head I go like, what would I do if someone talked to Rylan that way? The thing I try to follow that up with is like, well, what 3 things am I grateful for? Or what 3 things am I proud of myself for? Or what are 3 positives? So like, 1 negative, 3 positives, 1 negative, 3 positives. And it's not perfect. It's, I wish that there was like a better answer, but like, I just try to shift that perspective and get back into positivity, because that negative mindset, that negative self-talk it's contagious. It's toxic. It's like weeds in a garden. They'll just continue to grow. Even after you come in and sprayed weed killer on it, you go back there a week later and the weeds are growing again. So it's a garden you're constantly weeding. And the only way that I figured out how to weed it is like 3 to 1, 3 positives, 1 negative. Now I wish it was like 20 positive, 0 negative, but I haven't figured out how to get there yet. Maybe that's a possibility someday. So I just try to shift that perspective, reframe quickly, and get back into like a positive, grateful, forward-thinking mindset rather than critical, negative and sort of like judgmental, looking backwards perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, that is one of the ways to do it. And I hope that the audience takes actions whenever they are feeling, whenever they're having that dialogue within themselves, just to be aware of that. And one of the things that we had talked about before, right? Whether in conversation, and also we did a call a couple of months ago on vivid vision. I know that everything that you've been able to do, especially as you transition from working with Pat to then David Osborne, to then being the CEO of GoBundance, which, dude, you have changed GoBundance now in such, you're leading GoBundance in such an incredible way. And it's so cool because like you've seen it from when there were 30 members now to being over 1,000 members in the mastermind group.
Yeah.
And you've seen it all. As with me too, because I've seen it all. So
Right.
but I know that all of this, right, it may not have been specifically in your vision, but I know that you've created a vision that pulls you to what you want to do and the person that you want to be in the future. For people that don't know, number one, how to create a vivid vision, or that don't even know what they really want, what are some things that you would recommend to help them create a vivid vision?
Well, the first thing I would say is, like, for you and Ward and FI investors to repurpose that recording we did and add it to the show notes, because I think, like, the worksheet that we took people through, the concepts that we took people through, like, if you spend 1 hour of your week watching that webinar, and then the next week you spend 1 hour, like, I'm asking you to spend 1 hour of time working on your vision, your life will be forever changed. Like, it's not hard. It's not complicated. It's just different. So you look at your phone, you look at your screen time, you're like, oh my God, Instagram, 4 hours and 27 minutes this week, Facebook, 7 hours and 32 seconds this week, text, 13 hours, like whatever your screen time looks like, and say, I'm going to find 1 hour in that allocation of time, and I'm going to focus on me. And David calls it air game, right? Like, get out of yourself and start working on the life that you have, and start working on everything that you've got going on. And then the rest of the times you start working on your ground game, which is like the tactical habits, the work, the social media, whatever you're working on, right? That's your ground game. But I would tell people to just watch that webinar, Diego, to work on the worksheet that we put together for people, and then reach out to myself or you with any questions. I mean, the thing that I tell everybody is, like, go find a cool place that's inspiring. Pick a badass coffee shop, or a really cool brewery, or a park with a hike, or a mountain overlooking this beautiful city, like whatever it is to you that inspires you. Take a journal and work on a mind map. We all did those mind maps in high school or college or elementary school or grade school when we started to, like, write essays, right? And the mind map in the middle of it was like, what is the essay? And then we put 5 different things off the sides, and those were the 5 paragraphs. And under each paragraph, we put 3 points we wanted to make in the paragraph, right? So for your vision, start with your vivid vision in the middle, like, 5 years from now, the year is 2028. And then to the right, put health. And then under that, put 3 keys. And then to the underneath that, put family. And then underneath that, put career. And then on the left side, maybe put spiritual. And then on the left of that, put adventure. And then, to the left of that, put financial. And just set 3 things underneath each of them, and write it as a story. Write it as like a beautiful story that you're inspired to read. But just start with a mind map and start there and see how you feel.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like being able to taking the time to think about what you really want to do, and then putting yourself in 5 years, and then writing it in a way that, so you mind map it, and then you spend some more time to write it. And I know, because we've talked about it in the past, is that you ended with this or something better. Right. Because
look, man, I mean, everybody will say this, but we grossly overestimate what we can accomplish in 1 year, but just massively underestimate what we can accomplish in 5. And so, like, my mind is growing, it's evolving, it's expanding. So if I'm writing my 5-year vision, there's going to be a lot of things that I'm not aware of, that I'm not present to. Maybe it's, twins. Maybe it's a business area that I had never heard of. Maybe, 5 years ago, maybe people didn't know about crypto, and that's how they made their fortune, and probably lost it then. But, whatever that looks like, right? Like, you want to say this or something better, because you always want to leave room and opportunity and possibility for it to be different. Because I tell people all the time, I really believe that we get in life every single thing we ask for. It just looks different than we thought it would. So for Christmas, we say, I really want this thing, and we think it will come wrapped in a red box, and then under the tree is a green box with a pink bow, and all of a sudden we won't choose to open it because it wasn't how we thought it was going to look. But inside of that box might be the exact same thing you wanted. It might be the exact thing you asked for. It just looked a little different than you thought it would. And I think, by saying this or something better, I'm creating a possibility in my mind that there's other things that could show up that I'm not yet aware of, that I'm not going to be afraid to choose on.
Yeah, no, 100%. And then Now that you're, as we mentioned, you're the CEO of GoBundance, and of course you're leading other teams too. What would you recommend to somebody that's leading a team or leading a company,
Yeah.
to make sure that they are helping their employees the right way, that are taking action and having the right conversations with their team?
I would just say like create space to have vulnerable and honest conversations. Like one of the things that I do with our team is I get to know them personally. I understand what they want to accomplish over the next 5 years. I mean, I understand where they're trying to go with their lives, and all of these things I've learned from David. Like success leaves clues. You don't have to figure this stuff out on your own. Like it's all out there in podcasts like yours or YouTube videos or Facebook or Instagram, or I don't know about TikTok. I feel like that's probably mostly just the Chinese government trying to make Americans a little bit dumber. But all of this stuff exists out there. Like you don't have to recreate the wheel. You don't have to start from scratch. And so, the thing I do is I always try to slow down with our people, and I always try to understand where they're trying to go personally, and then use that as a conduit to a conversation about where we're trying to go professionally. If I can help you, Diego, should I ever be fortunate enough to work in the same capacity from an objective perspective, if I can help you get to where you want to go personally, as a byproduct of that, you will pour endlessly into where we're trying to go as a company, because you will understand that that's going to help you personally too. And I think that's what it's all about with teams and people and stuff. I mean, we talked about this the other day at my inner circle conversation. But one of the folks said he has a hard time relying on others. And I said, like, wow, man, I understand that. I too have a hard time relying on others. But I said, if you want to be Aaron Rodgers and win 4 MVPs, have a hard time relying on others. If you want to be Tom Brady and win Super Bowls, you have to figure out how to rely on others. And like, I say that with like the utmost respect to like a guy like Aaron Rodgers, because I'm a huge Packers fan. Aaron Rodgers has brought me amazing experiences and moments in my life from a fan perspective. But at the end of the day, I think he has always struggled to rely on others. And maybe that's, trauma. Maybe that's true. Maybe that's reality. I have no idea. I'm not his personal life. But I think you have to figure out, if you're leading teams, how to rely on others. And the way to rely on others is get to know them, build relationships with them, share things in common with them, and then create a vision together that you both can attack.
Yeah, no, 100%. Because you want to make sure that everybody is on the same boat and rowing the same way. Right. Because if not, if you have somebody that's rowing another way, going another direction, then at that point you're going to be slower.
And let's face it, there will be days where someone's rowing in a different direction or somebody's thinking something differently. But the more vulnerable and honest the conversations were on the front end, and understanding who they are and what they're doing and where they're going, the easier it'll be to say, like, hey, Matt, you're not showing up the way that I'm used to you showing up. Is everything okay? And then I can say, hey, so-and-so just passed away, or my daughter's this, or my whatever happens, right? I can kind of circle back and say, hey, this is what's going on. But because you had a relationship with me, because you spent time on the front end, you'll be able to recognize when things are off and have that conversation, rather than say, hey, 2 months later, firing me and saying, like, dude, you were rowing in the wrong direction. Like, you weren't on the right page.
Yeah.
I might not have even been aware of it.
And how do you know also when somebody's on the right bus, and what do you do when, it's on the right seat on the bus, and what do you do if you do need to switch him or let them go?
Yeah, I would tell you that, like, through like all the leadership stuff I've done and the hiring and training stuff I've done, like, the best way to get people in the right seat on the right bus at the right time is through accountability and conversations around what are they going to accomplish. One of the things that I'm working on right now is, like, job descriptions are beautiful. They put together a description of, like, Matt has an MBA and he's going to do all these things and think about these things. Now, granted, that's not me because I dropped out of college, but like a job description outlines, here's what we expect you to come in contact with. You'll be proficient in Excel. Like, what does a proficient in Excel even mean? And so changing a job description to a commitment list, like, I commit to doing all of these things. And if we put a commitment list together for a human inside of our organization for the seat that they're in right now, and we both sign the bottom of it, it's a very easy conversation to have every 30 days to go, are you achieving your commitments or not? And if the answer is no, you ask why. And if they're like, I don't understand it, or I don't have the right piece of paper or the right kind of pen, like, cool, we provide the support, we provide the help that they need. But ultimately, through that commitment list, through those conversations from an accountability perspective, people will self-select in or self-select out. Like, I can't tell you how many times through accountability people can come to you and say, Diego, I'm not the right guy for this opportunity. Okay, cool. I hear that, Diego. Tell me what opportunity you are the right guy for, because I see talent in you and I see an opportunity for us to work together. So how can we figure out the right seat for you? But it's an easy conversation if you bring it to me rather than I bring it to you, because then all of a sudden you're hostile and you're on fire and you're ready to go, right? Because I'm challenging you. So you use accountability, you use commitments, and you hold people to what they said they're going to do. And either they're in or they're out. And that's a part of the culture thing, right? Like, if it's an accountable culture, then people will self-select in or people will self-select out.
Yeah, no, that's 100% true. And I've seen you lead that way too with the different teams that you've led throughout the years. So,
and I'm still trying to get better at it, man. Like, one of the goals I have is to mentor under David 4 times a year. And what I do in those conversations is like, where could I get better? What do you see my missteps? Hey, I have this challenge. How would you handle it? Have this employee perspective. What would you be doing? How would you think about it? Because again, like, success leaves clues. So you reach out to your mentors and say, like, I'm stumbling. I feel like I'm, going uphill here. Can you help me? What would you do differently? And when you ask people what would they do differently, you don't have to always take their advice perfectly, but you have to take notes. You have to understand what they told you to do. And then you have to choose what you feel is best for you in the situation. But you have to close the feedback loop with that mentor, because if people come to you, Diego, and said, I really want to buy an investment, what should I do? And you're like, okay, I need you to go put your finances together. I need you to go reach Rich Dad Poor Dad. And they come to you 2 months later and said, I really want to buy a house, Diego. You go, did you put your finances together? No. Did you read Rich Dad Poor Dad? No. You probably give them one more chance. And they come to you 2 months later and say, Diego, I really want to buy an investment property. Like, if they aren't going to take action on what you ask them to do, eventually that mentor will like block you out and say, hey, like, you just want to talk the talk, you don't want to walk the walk, and I can't pour into those kind of people.
Yeah, and potentially say, I don't have the I mean, I would say, hey, I've told you this already. I don't have the time right now to help you if you're not going to take any action. I need to see results.
Right.
Yeah. Or ask them too, what's the excuse of you not taking action at the end of the day? So
yeah, and that's a beautiful conversation to have, right? But like, you have to take the feedback from your mentors, from your peers, and look at applying it to your life. And then close the, hey, Diego, I heard what you said to get my finances together and read Rich Dad Poor Dad. I got my finances together, but then I got totally in the weeds on this book called As a Man Thinketh. Here's all the lessons that I've learned. I'm going to go tackle Rich Dad Poor Dad. I'm still interested in buying an investment property. You're going to be like, oh my gosh, dude, As a Man Thinketh was another pivotal book. That was the second one I was going to give you on this journey. Send me your finances. Let me take a look. Let me look at where you could save a couple bucks, invest a couple bucks, etc. And so I think you've just got to communicate, and you've got to continue to show that you're taking action based on the feedback that person gave you.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, you mentioned earlier a little bit, and we had hot seat sessions, right, at your house a couple of weeks ago with the Inner Circle, with your coaching. And one of the things that we talked about was, or one of the topics that I still remember, and we actually did a podcast episode this past Friday. So I don't know when this podcast episode is going to go out live, I think next week. But 2 Fridays ago, we had a recap of everything that we learned at your event, because it was awesome. And we were there from like 7 in the morning till about 4 p.m. And one of the things that we mentioned was, when you heal your childhood's trauma, you also heal your parents' trauma and your grandparents' trauma. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because that one, like, we went deep in conversations at those, and that's one of my favorite parts of the hot seats.
This is like a beautiful concept that David's playing with right now, that he's like challenging me on, right? Like, he's talking about like the trauma that we're feeling in our lives right now is a part of like what we might have experienced as a child. And that came from probably the trauma our parents felt, which came from their parents, which came from their parents, right? So like, this is generational trauma. And like, when you heal your traumas, you don't do away with them. You don't get rid of them. You just understand where they came from, and then can continue to choose in spite of those quote unquote traumas. Like, we have traumas right now with our daughter, right? She's a 4-year-old, beautiful soul that's aggressive and wants to light the world on fire. She just spent 2 months in Wisconsin, and now she's coming back to Austin. And I think there's like a lot of change. We're talking about a new teacher, a new dance class, and her playroom doesn't look the same as it did. And like, I think like all of the change and anxiety around like going from one place to the other has caused some trauma for her. And so she's, you know, a little bit whinier and a little bit more emotional and a little bit, you know, more like just agitated. And that's not like trauma that we had meant to give her. That's like, you know, not things that we're not beating her, any of that stuff, but like it's trauma. Like we all have it. And so my wife and I are talking last night about like, okay, how do we show up differently? How do we help her get through this? Because like all of this is her being stressed and her being anxious. And if we don't work through these things and try to like connect with her and calm her down, like this is a trauma that could stick with her, right? Change could scare the shit out of her forever. Now it won't happen because, you know, she's 4 and it's just a little blip, but like those are the things that can happen. And so I think when you heal those traumas, you help address them for your parents if they're still around. You help address them for your grandparents if they're still around. But more importantly, you solve them for generations to come. Whether it's diet, whether it's negative self-talk, whether it's the conditions you live or the place you're at, etc. So like by healing yourself, you're healing your kids and their kids and their kids and their kids. And now all of a sudden you're healing generationally little wounds or scars or things that may have popped up in your life that came from your parents that, you know, you didn't even carry, but for some reason that little like agitation button inside of you still is there because of those traumas way long time ago.
Yeah. And you mentioned a little bit of that's something that Osborne is talking about. And I saw the presentation that he did at the Champions event in December last year. And as you mentioned, something that you're working on too. How does someone become aware or like start with analyzing themselves to see where the trauma is in their life?
Well, I mean, I would, there's a lot of ways, right? Like one is go hire a therapist. One is, you know, go sit with your journal somewhere and just write down what shows up. One is look at yourself in the mirror for 30 minutes and don't move until you ask yourself 300 questions or something crazy like that and go super deep. The one that I like most that I'm trying to put more into practice is like get candid feedback from the people that you surround yourself with. Like, hey, Diego, I'm working on myself. One of the things I'm trying to do is I'm trying to have those closest to me complete this survey. You're one of 20 people that have asked for these results on. It's all going to be anonymous. My only ask is, can you be 100% vulnerable and authentic with me? Like, just be candid and get feedback from people. Like, if you go to your mom and dad and say, like, Mom and Dad, I love you to death. I'm really appreciative of everything you've given me. I need your help. Would you give me 100% authentic, candid feedback about where you see me right now and where you see my issues are? Like, I'm not going to hold a grudge. I just am trying to see some blind spots that I have for myself. Nobody's going to say no. Now, parents will sugarcoat it more than a friend, and a friend will sugarcoat it more than an accountability partner, and they'll all sugarcoat it more than the coach that you're paying money to, and they'll all sugarcoat it even more than your greatest enemy. But just ask people, man, and don't judge or be critical of the feedback they get. Just be like, wow, I hear that. So like the words that I'm using carry a stronger weight to you than I recognize. And I'm using words as a weapon. Like this was a conversation that my wife and I just had. And she's like, sometimes the words you use, I don't think you recognize how powerful those are and how much they feel like a weapon to me. And I could go like, F you, it's just a word, like sticks and stones, blah, 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 right? But I go like, wow, I hear that. The words I use are weapons to you. So now I need to reframe how I use words, right? Like to me, it's just like bullshit that comes out of my mouth, but to her, it's a weapon. And so now I need to go, okay, cool. If the words are a weapon, how can it be a weapon for great? How can it be a weapon for healing? How can it be a weapon for love rather than how can it be a weapon for manipulation and agitation through a conversation? And the only reason that I got that feedback from her was because we're working with this communications coach that's given us some language to be vulnerable, that's given us these tools like RASA, which is receive, appreciate, summarize, and ask. Like I'm starting to get tools, and the way I get tools is by listening to others, asking for help, looking into podcasts. I mean, our daughter, she's having a hard time right now, 4 years old. So what did I do? I've listened to 4 podcasts in the last 24 hours about toddlers, whining, what it means, how to look at it, and how to reframe it. I've totally changed my perspective. As 2 days ago, I was like, this little kid is driving me nuts. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, this little kid is hurting. She's scared. She needs my love. I'm going to get down to her level. I'm going to give her a giant bear hug, and I'm going to tell her, you're safe. We got you. I see you're nervous. How can I help you? And it's just a totally different shift. And it came from seeking wisdom, seeking information. And it came from getting feedback from others.
Dude, you are a student of life. And that's what I love about how you live your life. And then you take action. You're you're a sponge, and then you execute. I love that.
Well, that's because I've learned from people like yourself, man. I mean, I might not be a college graduate. I'm a college dropout, but I'm a student of life because I've seen you and what being a student of life has done for you and your financial freedom, while still being a dreamer. Like, here I am, born into this country, given citizenship just because of the hospital I was given birth at. I think that's saying it right, given birth at. Yeah, where I was birthed, like the hospital I was birthed, right? And here you are saying, I get a job out of college. I don't have my driver's license. I can't get employed because I don't have a quote unquote citizenship, so don't worry, I'll still pay taxes. So let me start a corporation, employ myself through the corporation. GM, you enter into an employment agreement with my corporation, and I'll become an employee through that. Like, frick, man, I learned so much from you, which is like, the obstacle is the way. Like, there's no other choice. Ride your damn bike to work. When you didn't have your license, what did you do?
Yeah. You figure it out. You figure it out. Ride a bike.
So I watch these amazing people like you do this crazy stuff, and I go like, man, if he can do it, I can do it, right? Like, if that person can run a marathon, I can run a marathon. I mean, my wife and I are training for 29029 right now with a bunch of GoBundance members, which is, you hike the elevation of Mount Everest in 36 hours. So you hike up a mountain, gondola back down. It's this huge event that Jesse Itzler puts on. It's going to be super hard. Like, man, there's a 67-year-old woman that hiked for 36 hours straight and finished with 5 minutes to spare. Like, if she can do it, I can do it.
Mm-hmm.
Just got to be a student, got to be open to it, and got to be willing to take action on the information I learned.
Yeah. Damn, man. This is a lot of great content. And I know we've spoken a lot about different subjects, and that's one of the things that we can go deep on. Real estate and the market, we've talked. Yeah. So for me, this is amazing. And thank you for always being willing to share everything too, very, very openly. So what's next for you? What are you most excited about?
Man, I'm most excited to just keep waking up every day and seizing the opportunities that pop up in front of me. Rylan was a little sick last week. It just humbled me to just be so grateful that my kids aren't, having cancer run rampant through their body, and we're sitting at St. Jude's hoping that they, beat this. Or I'm fortunate that my wife and I are happy and healthy. My parents feel okay and pretty good. My in-laws are great. Like, man, what's next for me is just continue to live the most abundant life I can live. And that's by, making those around me feel loved, seen, and heard, making myself feel loved, seen, and heard, and then just continuing to make choices. I mean, I'm super excited about GoBundance. I think like we're going to continue to help humans evolve on this journey of life. And if we can make, every single GoBundance member 1% better every single year, all of a sudden the world gets changed in 10 years, right? Because of the compounding effect. Like, that to me is exciting. I'm very excited about everything I'm doing with David and the opportunities we have in front of us there. I'm excited about, my inner circle, which we're going to change the name of and rebrand, but like, I'm excited to pour into others and continuing to give these lessons that I learned to other people.
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited for my son to have his first day at school in a couple of weeks, and my daughter to go back to school in a couple of weeks, and, my wife to complete 29029 with me. And, I'm just excited about all that has in my life. I'm in the process of trying to write a book. I'm, trying to do a lot of cool things, but at the end of the day, I'm most excited to just connect with amazing people like you, like the FI investors communities, and continue to try to be a servant-based leader, and just enjoy this thing called life, because I don't know how long it will last.
Yeah. No, that's true. We never know when will be our last day, but as long as we're living life to the fullest, with the right people surrounding us, life is good. Life is good.
Bingo, man.
Where, if people want to reach out, where can people find you?
I mean, I'll have you link like my social media stuff in the show notes. My email is just matt@gobundance.com. I'm not the best online presencer or like social media but we're working on that and trying to get better at that as well. Just reach out. And the thing I would challenge each and every one of the people listening on this thing today, Diego, is like every single month, reach out to somebody you don't think will answer, whether that be you, Diego, or me, or Ryan Holiday, or Jesse Itzler, or whoever it is, right? Reach out to them, share something about what you learned, share what you're working on, and ask for something. Because the worst thing that can happen is they don't respond. And if they don't respond, your life is exactly the same as it was before you sent the email, before you sent the text, before you sent the Instagram message. But if they do answer, and they often will, your life will be changed because they'll pour into you and you can learn more and more and more. So, I tell this thing all the time. Like if I speak or if I'm, on a podcast or if I'm talking to GoBundance guys, I'll share my phone number. I'll share my email. And then people are like, are you crazy? I'm like, dude, one person will reach out. Two people will reach out. Like you can talk to, I spoke in front of 400 people a couple of months ago, gave my email on stage. Guess how many emails I got? 0.
Not even one.
0.
Man.
Not even one.
Man.
Because people go, he won't answer. He's too busy. He's whatever. Or maybe they say he's an idiot and I don't want to talk to him, which is great too. That's your perspective. But if they did reach out, I would talk. I would answer. I would help. You would do the same, man. People want to help people.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that's one of the things that actually, like, I did that in 2014. I know the audience knows that story. When I reached out to Pat Hyben, which is the guy that Matt was working with back in the day. And I just took that chance, right? I sent out that tweet.
Yeah.
And we'll share that story because it's funny. It turns out, so I always share, I reached out to Pat Hyben, he responded and blah, blah, blah. Well, years later, Matt tells me, hey, what you don't know is that it was me who was responding on behalf of Pat Hyben. And I was like, holy crap, dude. Thank you so much for doing, for responding. And your responses were actually like super helpful. And if I wouldn't have reached out to Pat Hyben, right, I wouldn't be at all where I am today, because that is what led me to GoBundance, to be in that room with the guys, and they took a chance on me. They took a chance on you, right? But it all becomes from the part of being a servant leader and trying to be of value, with your time, with your time in the beginning when there's not much more to offer back in the day, right? So that's good.
Well, look, man, it's like I said at the beginning, we're all one choice away from changing our destiny. It's dramatic, but that one choice to send that text or that Twitter direct message shaped your destiny for years to come, shaped your family, shaped your generations, right? Because that one choice led you to be able to choose to go to GoBundance, which led you to choose financial freedom, which led you to choose to learn how to be a keynote speaker, which led you to TEDx talks, to, investing, to buying in Puerto Rico. Like, dude, one choice. Like every single person is one choice away.
Yes, 100%. 100%. Well, Matt, thank you very much for your time. Really value all our conversations that we've had throughout the years, the text messages at like 6 a.m. that we've had, the conversations, the calls. And you are somebody that I look up to, always having great conversations. So thank you so much for being in my life and sharing your story today.
Yeah, thank you, man. I look at you as a hero and as a mentor. I hope my kids can have as much grit as you have and as you've displayed day in and day out in your life. And I love that you're pouring into other people and helping people achieve financial independence. I think that's the greatest gift anybody can give or receive. And so I'll support you any way I can. I'll support your community any way I can, because you've helped change my life, and I'm forever grateful for you, man. Thank you for everything.
Well, Matt, thank you very much for being here, and we'll see you in the next time.
Thank you for listening to the FI Investors Podcast. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. And share this with a fellow real estate investor who you think would find value in what we do. Until next time.